So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're listening from today. We are going to be talking about IBM's ACS or Access Client Solutions and really what it can do for you as a system administrator or somebody at least charged with looking after IBM I. I'm not alone today. I'm joined by a colleague of mine, Chuck Lesinsky. Chuck, would you like to introduce yourself and
Sure.
talk about QUser.org as well?
Yeah. So I've been with Help Systems now for going on 22 years. Spent all that time with our IBM I solutions, automation, workload automation, cybersecurity, and so forth. And let's see, I got into the AS400 business back in 1990. Been a wonderful career, and QUser.org is a IBM I focused user group that's 100% virtual. It's the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, IBM I Power Systems user group. I'm the vice president, held many positions with that group. If you are looking for a user group, if you don't have someone to join in your area, check out QUser.org. We've got a lot of good content. It's very inexpensive to join, and in May, here in about a week, next Tuesday and Thursday, we're having a SQL workshop. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about SQL and even more about ACS, feel free to check that out and join us.
Fantastic. There is some great education in there. I've learned an awful lot. So I guess I'll speak a little bit about myself. So I've been in and around IBM I guess pretty much since day one, really. And I've been at Help Systems for a total of 16 years now, and was recently made an IBM champion. Really proud of that. Lots of work done in the community, and that's great. I'm also part of the Common Europe Advisory Council, where we meet and greet IBM, speak to them regularly about their plans for this wonderful platform. So it's great to be able to at least help direct this wonderful platform that we all love. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about ACS. We are going to show you how you can use it to analyze performance, because talking to customers, as myself and Chuck do, many people just use it for 5250 and maybe one or two other things, but there's lots of things in it. I'm then going to show you how you can manage your spool files, an IFS, and how it makes things a lot better in that respect than the green screen. We're then going to look at SQL and scripts, and some of the scripts that IBM make available that you can use in ACS. We're going to go back to some years now, and we're going to see how we can transfer data both to and from the server. Again, not just all data as well. There's something in there that I learned as I was looking at this, preparing for this webinar. Open source absolutely everywhere at the moment, including IBM I. I'm going to show you how you can use ACS to make your job easier as an administrator in keeping that up to date. And then we're going to touch on restricted task management and what you can do there. So I guess let's go right back to basics. So what is ACS? It's IBM's Access Client Solutions. It's not client access, it's Access Client Solutions. And it is, as it says there, it's interacting with IBM. There should be an I on the end there, but it's interacting with IBM I in lots of different ways, shapes, and forms. And there you go, it replaces client access. So we've now had ACS for a number of years, and the rate of knots that enhancements are going into it, I hope that we keep it for another rate of years. It does dovetail with Navigator for I. So this is Navigator for I. This is the web-based tool that, again, you can do some administration with. And I'd like to see them come together at some stage, so it's it's pretty seamless. But at the moment, some functions you select in there will open up a web page and prompt you to log into Navigator for I. And it's built on Java. That means you can run it pretty much anywhere. I know a lot of my compatriots run it on a Mac. How do you get it? Well, if you Google ACS or IBM ACS download, you'll get to a web page. You'll need to sign into it. It'll need an IBM ID, but this is what you're presented with on the left-hand side here. The base package is right at the top there. I tend to download that, to be honest, just to make sure that that I've got everything. There's some OS specific ones that are smaller. Your download uses HTTP or HTTPS. You can use download director when you download. It tends to be a bit slower. But also now on the right hand side of the screen now, IBM ACS Client is also delivered via PTF, and it can be deployed to the IBM I itself by installing said PTF on the I. If you install that PTF, you'll get ACS in that particular directory. So again, it's neat. There's several ways to get hold of it. If we take I guess the traditional method, what most people tend to do, they would Google it, they would sign in with their IBM ID and download potentially a base package. This is what you'll get. You'll get a zipped up component of files that you then extract. It's quite hefty, it was 134 meg. You would extract that. And what I've found the kind of best course of action is to then, in this particular screenshot, I'm running a 64-bit Windows, I think Windows 10 PC. So I'm launching the installation there. And what then happens is you get a series of prompts, like you see there, asking you what you want to use within that particular package. There's maybe 7 or 8 different prompts where you say yes or no, and it'll install exactly what you need. So nice and easy, 2 different ways to get it, and you then have ACS on your box. Now, before we go any further, Chuck, you're going to kick off the first poll, I understand. We've lost your audio, Chuck.
Thank you. Yeah, what do you use ACS for today? 5250 green screen, performance analysis, IFS and spool files, SQL scripts, open source management. Take your pick. You can choose multiple. And you know, Ash, many of us are more so focused on system administration. And we've learned that there are a number of SQL scripts that are available in ACS now. We're going to talk about that for doing more system administration activities, which is really interesting. And then, so if you're interested in learning more about SQL, I'd highly recommend that because it does provide a tremendous amount of functionality and a deep dive analysis into what's going on in your system. So let's close the poll and share the results. All right, Ash, what do you think? Vast majority 5250 green screen, of course, but we do have a little dribble of performance analysis and open source management, SQL scripts and IFS and spool files. So pretty typical of what we see out there with our client base.
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody loves 5250. You know what you're going to get. It's quick. There's no lag or anything. But it's great to see people managing the IFS and spool files, because I actually think that's stronger than the green screen. And hopefully, with education sessions, we can get the other 3 areas up as well, so that people don't just automatically default and think green screen whenever they think they need to do something.
Correct.
Fantastic. So what is in ACS? Let me just get my mouse going here. The first thing we'll tell you about, we're not going to spend an awful lot of time on this, but schemas. So a schema is another name for a library, and you can perform a whole multitude of things with tables or files, exactly the same thing, such as query them. You can start and stop journaling. You can discover who has a file locked. You can alter permissions, so you can both see and change permissions. In 7.4, this was one of the things I learned, you can actually pick two files and compare them in here, which is really, really neat. You can view information pertaining to indexes, more on this later. You can actually look at the contents and actually download files from here as well. Really, really powerful stuff. But again, you can do a lot of this from the green screen, but you've got all this at your fingertips. I think this is really neat, and we could probably do a whole webinar. Once I started digging around in here, you could probably do a whole webinar on this on its own, to be honest. So yes, you can download, you can clear, you can upload, etc., etc. An awful lot of things in here. Now, again, I learned this. I actually discovered this recently by chance, that if you want to change your password across multiple IBM I LPARs, you can simply go into ACS, click on Edit Preferences, and you'll be presented with a list of machines that you're able to connect to, things that machines you've added previously. If you want to change your password on multiple machines, you can hit the Control button and multi-select those machines, and then use the Change Password button. And that will prompt you for your change of password, and it will roll that out to multiple partitions. Really, really neat. Again, if you do that on IBM I, you've got to do some legwork. You've got to chase your tail until you've followed all those through. So you can save some time with that. I think that's really, really neat. Another quick feature here, before we get into kind of the meat of the presentation, is, and you may not know about this, is screen history. So if you open up a 5250 and you go into Communication, Configure, and Preferences, you can actually turn screen history on, as indicated in that red rectangle there. And what that does, it keeps, I think, 15 different screens worth of screen history, as shown in the bottom there, that you can pop out or minimize, like a rolling 15. So if you ever need to go back to a particular screen to see what was on it or what you entered, you can go back to that. You can toggle back to any one of those 15 screens, copy and paste from it, etc. There's also the ability to archive those screens as well. So if you have that particular need, you can simply turn on screen history archiving, and it will save it away to either a local or a network drive. Again, there'll be people that have some uses for that, Chuck.
You know, we've got some commentary here that Donna, for instance, loves that feature. That's cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, I once I discovered this, I thought I could have done with this years ago, absolutely years ago. Fantastic. Chuck, take us away with analyzing system performance.
All right, so one of the big topics in the IBM I world is SQL processing, especially with JDBC connections, you know, using the IBM I DB2 database as a backend database for open source applications, and even embedding SQL, of course, into native RPG code. So let's talk about how an SQL request gets processed on IBM I and how we can look at that performance through ACS. Ash, I'd like you to, there we go, thank you. Okay, so when an SQL request comes into the system, first of all, it goes through a syntax check process. And if it doesn't match how the system is expecting it to look, it's going to be rejected. At that point, it is dropped into what's called the SQL plan cache or plan, where it goes through an optimization process. The operating system decides what indexes to use. It basically analyzes what's the best way to go about running this SQL request properly and optimize it so that data is returned quickly to the requesting user, program, and so forth. So once the plan is created in the operating system, then the SQL is actually executed. Okay, so what goes into that SQL plan? All right, so the plan looks at things like, what's your work management configuration on the system? What sort of views and indexes do you have created? Are you using symmetrical multiprocessing, et cetera? What release and mod level of the operating system are you on? How many rows are in your tables? How about your job attributes, your run priorities, and so forth? All that goes into the SQL plan. All right, and that plan is stored. The plan analysis, the optimization analysis that the operating system goes through is called the plan cache.
Yeah, and this has been around for a long time, actually, way back in 2006 with the advent of 5.4. And the first thing to note is it's automatic. You don't need to start it, turn it on, or turn it off. You can choose to work and analyze it in ACS, and we're going to see some of that today, or you can actually do it in Navigator for I. And the data in the plan cache is fluid. It's in a constant state of change. It's cleared at IPL time, or you can actually clear it with a stored procedure as well. And don't get this confused with the IBM I database monitor. The database monitor is designed for specific problems, and that is a situation where you would use the start database monitor, or strdbmon and ndbmon. The database monitor is high overhead typically, but includes really detailed data, including before and after comparisons. So that tends to be run for a relatively short period of time to pinpoint something, something specific. Plan cache is something that is constantly changing, but it runs all the time, all with negligible overhead. As I say, it does get cleared at IPL time or via a stored procedure. So probably the quickest way, there we go. The quickest way to access the Performance Center is maybe via 5250. Go to the Actions and SQL Performance Center, or even from the main ACS menu. A plan cache snapshot is basically an SQL plan cache data saved upon user request. It was designed to provide a mechanism to periodically capture statement information, and snapshots represent the data in the plan cache captured at some point in time, which is then stored in a single database table to ensure that the valuable data in that is not lost at the next IPL. You're basically moving it out of the way so it doesn't get cleared, or when the system decides that it's become aged and it's discarded out of the plan cache. The number of plans held in the plan cache depends on the complexity of SQL statements. And if you choose to create this snapshot based on certain criteria such as runtime, date, frequent runners, etc., or users. Chuck, you're going to talk about the automation of this particular area.
Yeah, you just showed how you can create a snapshot of the plan cache via ACS. You can also automate that through a call and basically dump the plan to or the plan cache to a table that is queryable. All right, and there are a number of built-in queries and analysis tools in ACS that you can leverage. And so, for instance, let's say you IPL on a regular basis and you'd like to dump the plan cache prior to IPL because, as Ash mentioned, the plan cache gets cleared upon IPL. And in fact, Ash, I IPL'd our demo system last night. So we have a fresh plan cache as of last night, about 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So we'll take a look at that today.
You could use these commands then chuck in CLs, or you could put them on a schedule or something like that if it's something you wanted to dump out regularly then.
Exactly. You could literally create a plan cache snapshot once an hour if you wanted to, or once a day, and there are companies who do that.
Got it.
All right, so once the plan cache has been dumped, once you have a snapshot of the plan cache, you can then go about your analysis. So for instance, as Ash mentioned, you might want to see the top consumers, the longest runs, the ones that run the most often. You can look at this data in terms of users running the SQL. You can look at the SQL statement itself. You can look at, for instance, if it's a JDBC connection, you can look at the IP address as to where this request or workload is coming from. And likewise, there's a tool called Visual Explain that goes through the flow of the optimization. All right, so it goes through the steps. It's maybe more interesting than useful for you, but you can absolutely see how the SQL statement is going to be executed via the operating system. Basically a graphical representation of what the plan is for that particular request.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, I guess, Chuck, that this does flow from right to left.
It does. And I don't have an answer for that, but it does go from right to left. All right, well, we have a live demo. All right, let's look at the SQL Performance Center. So I'm going to share my screen, and Ash, you'll have to make me, or I guess I could make myself the presenter, can't I?
There we go.
Yes, I can. Okay, Ash, let me know when you can see my screen.
Got it.
Okay, a couple ways we can get to the Performance Center. All right, just through the 5250 emulation under the Action menu, there's an SQL Performance Center option. And then from the main menu of the IBM Access Client Solutions, you'll see actually the two options we're going to spend some time with here, Run SQL Scripts and the SQL Performance Center. All right, so let's bring up the Performance Center. You may have never looked at this, and it's definitely worth exploring. All right, and what this is going to start with is a view of the plan cache. As I mentioned, we IPL'd last night, so we have a fresh plan cache as of last night. It looks like about 7:15 when we IPL'd the system. As mentioned in ACS, there's a menu option to create a plan cache snapshot. Otherwise, you can use a command, and we'll look at that in just a second. But I did want to just point out that we've got 591 active queries, number of queries that have run since we've started. 45,000 requests have occurred since we IPL'd. All right, so we've got a lot of information here that talks about what's happening with SQL requests on your system. All right, let's take a look at the plan cache snapshots. Okay, we've got a number of older snapshots here, but I'm going to sort by date, and I created this one last night. All right, and you'll see the schema where it's located in. This is the library. Well, let's just take a quick look at that. Work lib, SQL. All right, so here's my library that my plan cache snapshot objects are going to. All right, so when we work with the plan cache snapshot, what's going to happen is basically some queries are going to run behind the scenes over this data. All right, so we have a snapshot here that was taken 10 o'clock last night. We're going to use the analyze option. So I just right-clicked, and let's analyze our snapshot. So this is a point in time. This was the plan cache as of 10 o'clock last night. Let's see what we've got. So what's happening now is it's running a query over that database, and it says, well, we've got 123,000 SQL statements, all right? And we can look at this a couple different ways. First of all, we've got 17 users that ran the queries. We've got 73 jobs. And we might want to start here just with a summary. So we have a lot of data. Let's take a look at that from a summary standpoint. How many times were certain statements executed? How long did they take? What was the maximum runtime, and so forth? And that's how you use this. Basically, we're running queries over the data. All right. So for instance, here's our list of statements summarized. And you'll see primarily May 12th listed here because that's when the plan cache was recreated. All right, and there's quite a few columns in this data. All right, I'm going to scroll way over. All right, so you can see things like library list. Scrolling further, you can see, for instance, what the interface was that was used. Scrolling further, you can see the job name and IP address if it was a JDBC connection. So kind of a neat feature too is if you're looking to analyze a particular SQL statement for any reason, you do have the ability to right click and work with the SQL statement. All right, and it will actually load the statement into the run SQL script, all right, where you can analyze it further. We'll look at run SQL scripts in detail here in just a minute. Okay, that's the summary view. Let's look at it in terms of more of the detail view. Now, there were a lot of columns in this view. All right, you can change your view and you can change which columns you want to see or not. You can see I've unchecked some columns. All right, so you can decide which columns you want to see, and you can also move them up and down. All right, so for instance, if IP address is something that you would like to have early on in the list, you can certainly do that. All right, so there's my IP address, for instance. Okay, let's take a look at a user summary now. You've got certain users on your system or service profiles, running requests. Let's do a user summary on our plan cache dump. All right, so here's the user profiles, runtime, maximum runtime, average runtime for the request, and so forth for the SQL requests that have come in. This is all data that came from the plan cache. Further over on the right-hand side is number of rows that were requested from the SQL. Okay, also, and we'll look at this in more detail when we get to the run SQL script option, but under the examples in run SQL script, there are DB2 for I services. And one of them is called the daily SQL plan cache management script. All right, so I'd recommend you go out and look at this and make sure you understand it. But you can see at the very top, it creates a couple libraries on your system to store the plan cache snapshot. You don't have to use this, but it's interesting, so you might want to go out and look at that. All right, I think that's enough on the SQL Performance Center. Let's talk about managing IFS and spool files, Ash.
Fantastic. I'm just going to share my screen. And we should be back in business. We are, yeah. So I guess we're all probably guilty to different levels of in that we often default to the green screen for some things, but slowly but surely, IBM are adding capabilities either into ACS or Navigator for I, so that we can embrace a modern interface. Now, this is important if we want the perception of IBM I to change. I think we all have an ongoing commitment to this. IFS and the management of spool files, I think, has always been a bit of an Achilles heel for IBM I. No more. So through ACS, you can manage the IFS as easily as you can through your Windows laptop with Windows Explorer, and pretty much like for like functions: create, change, rename, copy, manage security. And what I find really neat is that you can send IFS contents from one partition to another. And I dread those kind of things from the green screen. If you're using WorkLink, that will be really hard work. So we're going to have a look at this in a minute. I'm going to do a little live demo of that. As I say, another Achilles heel was the spool files area. Work spool files is great, but again, it can be cumbersome. With ACS, you can move, hold, release, view spool files, and with filtering, choose users, out queues, specific jobs, user data, even the date and time of creation. So let me have a go at sharing my my screen here, and let's get ACS up, and hopefully that appears there. Let's make that a bit larger.
Here we go.
Okay, you can see that, Chuck. So I have a number of partitions defined here, probably more than I should. If I pick a machine, I've got bookworm here, and we'll click on IFS. And I'll just, sometimes takes a few seconds to come up. Actually, it did come up. It's come up on a different monitor. Here we go. So you can see that was really quick. I'd previously signed on to bookworm, but I'm working from home. I'm on a VPN. It's quite sprightly. I can dig in here. I can go back out, all very quickly. If I go into view and columns, similar to what Chuck has just shown you, I can control exactly what I see. I can control in what order I want to see them, nice and easily. We're all interested in different things. If I pick a directory here, I'm really not sure what's in this directory, and click on permissions, and just drag that up there. Exactly the same as what you'd see in Windows Explorer if you were looking at a Windows directory. Everything at hand and very quickly as well. You've got the size here, you've got the use, you've got security. It tells you whether auditing is active for that particular directory and the objects in it also. Click on this again and look at permissions in here. Again, let me just drag that back over. As you see in here, you can look at public and private permissions. Again, you can change them all within here. You can also change it to be skewed by authorization lists. You can browse away here and look at authorization lists that are on the box. Again, really easily, a lot easier than it definitely is on the green screen. But let's upload something. If we just drill into here, and I'm just going to right mouse click and say I want to upload something. And let's go to my PC, and hopefully there's something in temp that is not too big. Let's upload that. That looks quite small. Just a confirmation we click on upload, and running commentary in the bottom half of the screen, and it's uploaded. It was a small Word document, but it's uploaded. Download is great as well. We can download and view, we can download ... which gives us the ability to change the download directory, but it's really quick, or it's quick enough. It's a lot quicker than messing around on the green screen. We can also send that to somewhere. This is on Bookworm at the moment. I could send that to another host. And remember the password ability to change the password on multiple partitions. If you hold Control down, you can actually send that to multiple partitions. Again, on the green screen, that would be hard work. So I really like that. Let's go into Bookworm and look at printed output. So here we have the printed output. If we go into View and Filter in here, it defaults to all users, which on this particular partition is probably not much more than me anyway. But you can filter it. I know you can do this and work with spool files, but this is what we're used to now. This is graphical interface at its best. You can pick particular output queues. You can pick dates and times that spool files were created. It all makes perfect sense. It's also a lot quicker. Let's go back into filter and turn that off. And of course, as you expect, you could view these spool files on the fly. That's not downloaded it, it's purely viewed it. Or you could download it and you set your default directory just here. Now you've got this clever little button here, this common sense switch here that allows you to append the system name. So if you download lots of spool files, you can see exactly where they've come from. I think that's really clever, and it's definitely something that I would use regularly. So Chip, we're going to talk about SQL now in a little bit more details. So we've kind of seen how we can maybe get rid of work link, work spool file. How about getting rid of SQL too while we're there? What can we do to improve that? Well, you've probably, there's something called SQL services available on IBM I. You've probably already got them on your server. They're delivered via the DB2 for I group PTF. So that's for 7.2, SF 99702, 703 for 7.3, and 704 for 7.4. And IBM are very committed to them. And with every new release of the OS or technology refresh, more get added. If you launch ACS and select Run SQL Scripts, you'll have the ability to see them, as Chip will show you. And rather than write a script from scratch, you can insert from examples, and we're going to see that. We're going to see that shortly. But really, what are they? Well, they're a method of doing things on I, whether it's at the database layer, whether it's at the sysadmin type layer. The second bullet there, I think this is a key thing. It makes IBM look and feel normal, so people without potentially IBM I skills can look at these scripts. If they're used to SQL, they can use those scripts. They contain great system information, and there were a number of enhancements with each and every technology refresh. They tend to fall into kind of two distinct areas. DB2 for I services, typically these are used for, I guess, DBAs or database engineers. And then on the right-hand side there, IBM I services, the modern alternatives for the non-database parts of the IFS. And again, usable outside of the green screen. These were the latest ones. These were, these I think are GA tomorrow, actually, on the 14th of May. So 10 new services, 7 have been enhanced. And just to give you a feel for for the kind of things they can do. The NVMe underscore info, that's for the non-volatile memory express. So you can see the capacity left, the device type, the estimate of life remaining, whether there's a degraded service, temperature thresholds, all those kind of things. The sysdistat one, that's kind of the same, but for spinning and SSDs. That's actually been enhanced as well for NVMe devices. Security underscore info, the values returned for these are closely related to the commands, the green screen commands that you'd see if you ran disk set A, display security attributes, or display security auditing. And you see elements with this is really neat. You see elements like such as security level, all about auditing. There's, I think, 14 different password related elements that get returned if you use that. You also see default public authority there as well, which is always can always be a danger area. So how can we find them? Well, they're built into run SQL scripts, and probably the best way to get started is to look at the examples. So you would look at the examples, you would potentially insert, for example, and then customize it. And we've customized that. We're only interested in ASP1. We want to know the capacity that is available. So nice and easy, we've ran that. As you can see, there's lots of them, and they keep appearing. And there's some fantastic ones, and there's some now that allow you to compare different values on different partitions. So these kind of things are game changing, I think. What do you think, Chuck?
Well, they absolutely are, and like you said, there's more and more being deployed all the time. And of course, you can create your own. Likewise, you can even run CL commands through Run SQL script. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these SQL requests that you can make. You can run them through the Run SQL script option. You could programmatically execute some of these requests. There also is a platform that Help Systems has in our robot product line called Robot Monitor. And Robot Monitor is designed as a IBM all operating system monitor tool, meaning it can monitor IBM it can monitor AIX and Linux running on Power. It can also monitor VIOS micropartitions, handling the virtualization of your network and storage in your environment if you do have BIOS. So this tool is designed as a monitoring architecture, monitoring tool for your system and workloads and jobs, et cetera, that are running there. Likewise, this tool allows you to set thresholds over that monitoring. And if any thresholds occur, we can send out exception messages to message queues or via robot alert or other tooling that we have in our robot product line to get the word out that you might have an issue. All right, so what does this have to do with IBM services and SQL requests? Well, what you can do is you can embed those requests right into the product, and you can have the data that's returned presented graphically to your administrators, to your application developers, to your help desk, and so forth, to not only provide insight into some of the more standard monitoring technologies, but also very customized via SQL. So if we don't have a built-in monitor type in Robot Monitor to monitor your workloads as you want to see them monitored, you can embed an SQL statement into our product as well. All right, so Ash, let's take a look at all the different monitor types that are available. All right, so on IBM this is a pretty complete set of the monitoring that's available in Robot Monitor. As you can see, we have things like CPU usage that's customizable by workload, faulting rates, disk IO, queue temp, temporary storage, and so forth. All those things that you should be monitoring. All right, and even if you don't have an issue necessarily that pops up on a regular basis, Occasionally, you might have an issue that, you know what, maybe we should monitor this over time to see what sort of thresholds we should put around some of these metrics. But in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see user supplied decimal, integer, percentage, and text. All right. What that means is you can embed SQL statements into the product, or you can create your own monitor types, Java heap size, IP version 4 connection count, even something like, I want to interrogate my robot schedule job history to look to see how many terminations that I've had, and there's the statement that would give you that. Now, of course, you might not be querying robot schedule, you might want to query your application software. All right, so you can embed that into a user-defined monitor type, and we will execute that command for you automatically. We'll collect the data, we'll summarize it over time, we'll present it in a dashboard, and so forth. All right, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, Ash. Let's go into a live demo, and then let's look at run SQL scripts and those IBM services and how you can leverage some of that. All right, let's walk before we run. All right, I'm going to share my desktop.
Got it.
All right, there we go. All right, a couple ways we can get there. All right, first of all, we can do a run SQL script here from the IBM Access Client Solutions main menu, or under the Actions menu, we can go to run SQL scripts. All right, so we're establishing a connection, and this is going to my system called Wisdom. And as Ash mentioned in the presentation, you will see examples and insert from examples. All right, and there's a number of categories of example SQL requests. So you can see even something fairly new here, DB2 Mirror, all right, SysTools, DB2 for iServices, and then there's these IBM services. There's been a lot of talk in the various online trade publications and webinars around this, and this area just keeps growing. All right, you can see we've got application-related SQL services, got communication-related services. All right, we've got Power HA, history log services, IFS, 10 largest files under a subdirectory. As Ash mentioned, what you can do is you can modify these to your needs, and then you can save them as your own example. All right, and we'll look at some of those that we've done. We've got IFS related, Java related, IBM services. We've got some message related services. PTF, of course, we're all familiar with the PTF group queries to see if you're up to date. More and more security related IBM services, spool, storage, system health, and look at the long list of work management type queries. All right. So if there is one that you particularly like and want to customize, all right, you can save this as an example, and you can establish a location for this. All right. So I have a custom category, and we'll look at those that are in there. When you save these, they are saved to a particular directory on your PC. All right. So let's look at my custom list. All right, I did save the PTF group currency. All right, I didn't make any modifications to it, but I did save it as a specific example that I wanted to share at some point. But here's one that came from a customer. He wanted to know how many ports were being used by a particular IP address where the port was 5,000 or greater. All right, so once you have the example, you can simply insert it like that. And now it's in the Run SQL Scripts window. And at that point, you can choose to run it. All right, so we're looking for IP 10.60.161.62. How many ports, local ports, 5,000 and above, and it says 6 are being used. Okay, so burn that into your brain because we're going to look at that again in just a minute. So let's clear that one out, and let's look at a couple more. So it's edit, examples, insert from examples. It takes you back to the category that you were just in. How about review public authority to files in library QGPL? All right. And Ash, I actually didn't customize this one like I should have. So let's just enter in QGPL here, and we'll change this one. This was the example that was actually supplied. So you do have to change the schema name unless you have a library called Toy Store in your environment. All right, so let's insert that and run it. So what this one is looking at is all the objects, in this case in QGPL, pick your library, that has that has public authority, public use authority or greater to the objects out there. And it's just going to give us a summary. And at that point, of course, you could dive in and do more analysis. All right, so it's looking at the public authority on all the objects in QGPL, and it says, guess what? There's 33 objects in QGPL that have public change authority. Huh, maybe we should look at that. All right, let's look at one more, and then we'll look at the automation behind this. Examples, insert from examples. How about the top 10 consumers of spool storage? All right, we're going to let that run for a second. And while it's running, I'm going to jump over and show you the Robot Monitor platform. So Robot Monitor was designed as a whatever operating system is running on your power server type monitor, all right? And it's very dashboard based, very visual based. You can see we've got CPU utilization, batch CPU, disk percent full, uptime, and so forth. So basically these dashboards are designed however you'd like to see them. But specifically, we wanted to look at embedding some of those SQL requests. So we're going to look at a system called Academy. And here's a couple examples. So here, for instance, it's telling me I've got 161 all object users on my system. All right, so how am I doing that? And you can see it's very red. All right, so I've got a user-defined data collection job that is executing a SQL statement, and it is executing it over the QSys user info table in QSys2. Okay, so that's part of the IBM services. How about communication related? Remember we just talked about IP version 4. All right, so here we're looking at the netstat info table in QSys2 and looking at all the IP version 4 connections, 5,000 and greater. All right, so this was a different system than we were looking at before, but you can see I've got 200 on this particular system. So what we're doing is we're collecting this data in real time. We're collecting it historically. Okay, so we can see whatever the value is, we can see that over a shorter period of time, but then we can also see it over a very long period of time. So we're averaging this data by month, and you can drill into, for instance, here we'll drill into the month of April, and we can see the summary data for every day in April. All right, all this data is collected native on IBM, stored on IBM, and you simply use the graphical interface for analyzing this data. And if you do need to set a threshold over that, that certainly is one of the options. All right, Ash, I'm going to stop sharing, and let's finish up.
Yeah, let me share my screen once again. Yeah, so transferring data to and from the box. So the ability to upload or download data directly between your PC and IBM has been around for a long time now. But if you've not played with it recently, I'd strongly encourage you to give it a go. For example, directly from Excel, you can have ACS upload a spreadsheet to an existing physical file or table. But what about if that file or table doesn't exist on IBM? No problem. You can have ACS create it, or create that physical file before uploading the data to it. How cool is that? Another neat feature is on the download. As you'd expect, ACS allows you to download a table from IBM to your PC, but what if it's a huge file? And what if you only want to download records where the region is equal to Europe? You can do that as well. Simply click on the data options and use region, not hyphen, but region equals Europe in the select clause. Click on OK, and that will pull down just those particular elements. Restricted tasks. So in ACS, after searching for a HMC, you have the ability to acquire the HMC 5250 console or Dispo 1, which in essence means you can perform any restricted task from the comfort of your laptop. SAFsys, non-sys, reclaim storage, IPL, etc., etc. Really neat, really quick. Simply acquire that machine. You can also view system reference codes. In fact, I used to be able to memorize a few of these a few years ago. Definitely a sign of a misspent youth sitting in a cold computer room, eagerly waiting IPLs to finish. But you can see those at a glance now and scroll back through them. You can also use this facility to activate DST and change the IPL type. Again, away from the green screen and in a modern interface. Open source package management. I guess talking of modern, IBM is now home to dozens and dozens of open source packages, PHP, Perl, Python, R, Ansible, to name but a few. Again, key for the continuous success and sustainability of the platform. But how, as a system administrator, can you install them? Well, you can use QShell, but for many, that's not an area of comfort. So you can do it through ACS. If you go into Tools and Open Source Package Management, it prompts you to sign on or to connect. I've picked a box here called Bruno. As soon as you click on OK, you get this display here. And I was going to demonstrate this, but we haven't got time today. You see three columns here. Let me get my my laser pointer. Once connected here, you see three columns. You'll see the install packages. So this is all your open source install packages. You see whether there's any updates available to the packages installed. And from that tab, you can actually pull the updates down. If there's any more available open source packages, they're displayed on that third tab, available packages. And you can simply click on them. You can click on information to understand a little bit more about them. But the most powerful thing is you can actually install them from that available packages tab. Incredibly powerful, makes it easy, makes it graphical, modern, and isn't that difficult as well. So you can install those and let your developers loose on it.
All right, Ash, we got our final polling question. How can help systems help you? I'd like to schedule a demo of Robot Monitor for my team. I'd like to start a free trial of Robot Monitor. I'd like more information about professional services, or maybe you'd like to schedule a tech update for your team. And that's where we talk to you about the help systems products that you own and the direction for the platform and the tools in your environment. And likewise, we talk about what's new at Help Systems. We've been very busy growing our offering and our portfolio, and we'd love to talk to you about all of what we have to offer in terms of automation and security. Huge security portfolio now, which is pretty awesome. Ash, we are almost at the top of the hour, but it looks like we've got about 1 minute left. And I'm wondering if there's any questions that you would like to field here for everybody.
Yes, now there is something that Michael pointed out that I forgot to mention is for the open source management, you have to have the SSHD server running. That has to be started. And also, I guess while on that subject, it's not recommended to use QSecOffer. You should use something else, But if you pick a profile that has more than 8 characters, as I found to my horror, you have to modify the SSH environment. There's a config file you have to change. If anybody wants some help in that, just reach out to me. I can point you in the right direction. And then you have to restart the SSH server. So that's just an FYI. Let's have a look. What question have we got?
A couple of comments about spool files. You know how in the past spool files have been very difficult to deal with through green screen, but now even if you're a rank amateur on IBM, you can pull a spool file off and send it to an end user.
Yeah, I think it makes things an awful lot easier. Now, there's a question, Chuck, that somebody's asked. When running the SQL scripts, can you output the results of what you're running? You can. On the SQL or the Run SQL scripts dialog screen, on the options, you'll see an option that says Enable Save Results. And the options are something like never for this session or always. And when that's turned on, it's turned off by default. When it's turned on, you can right mouse click the results and have them save into CSV or Excel or text format or something. So that's quite neat. And one final question, Chuck, before we finish. Robot Monitor, can it monitor and take offending action, or can it take action on offending jobs?
It does have functionality in it such that if a job is consuming too much CPU, for instance, it can throttle that back by changing the run priority. It can even put a job on hold. So for instance, if you have a JDBC connection coming in and it's hammering your system, you could tell Robot Monitor to lower its priority down to a run priority of 99 if you'd like to.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Well, we've run out of time, Chuck. We should have done a 90-minute one.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks, Ash, for inviting me to participate today. And we hope everybody has a great rest of your day and rest of May. And we'll see you in a upcoming Help Systems webinar real soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.